Okay, guys, this writing is entitled What It Means to Be Human. I hope you are ready. We have a moral failing in that we hide ugly truths from ourselves. But the fact that we find such truths ugly is healthy. It's a sign of our humanity. This is all the proof we need that we are born naturally empathic. That is the meaning of being human. We are not apex predators. The whole thought process of domination, survival, and rule are all constructs that have been shoved down our throats since birth. This type of thinking is what keeps us enslaved. This is a basic program that was instilled at birth. This is one of the underlying programs that we must address before we can affect any other change. How are we to untangle the lies and manipulations if we refuse to face these basic assumptions? And that's what these things are, is assumptions. It only takes a quick running it through our faculty of reasoning to see quite clearly that these things do not align with our deep understanding of who we are. This is why, when confronted with these foundation-crushing thoughts, most are immediately thrown into a whirlwind of emotions and blindly stick to their guns. They can't handle the cognitive dissonance being brought to their attention. It is easier to fool people than to convince people that they have been fooled. Most are deathly afraid to question things they have based their lives on because their whole basis for reality is founded upon these lies. They have lived their whole life without asking themselves why they believe this way or that. And even when they have questioned, they just move from one section of this slavery to another, using the guide of knowledge acquisition on any given subject as the rule, jumping from rabbit hole to rabbit hole, when they won't even confront the fact that all of this is just superfluous distraction to keep them from the true knowledge, the knowledge they were born with. Everything else is just illusion and distraction. If you want to be a vegan, you can spend a lifetime acquiring the necessary proof of why veganism is the answer. If you want to be a carnivore, you can spend a lifetime in rabbit holes that support you being a carnivore. It never ends. That is the whole devil is in the details of this slave matrix. Until we quit playing these surface level games and really get down to the heart of the matter, we are running in circles chasing our own tails. Humans are empathic. We feel on a deep level. When we are born, instead of providing a safe space for that empathy to flourish, we are brought into survival and dog-eat-dog programming. We can feel the immense amount of stress and conflict our parents are under. We feel their every emotion. They can lie and put on an act as much as they want, but ultimately, we know exactly what is underlying their surface level masking. They do this because it is all they know. They cannot lie to us. What happens is because they think they have to teach us how to eat, sleep, walk, talk, shit, and breathe, there is never even a moment of fostering our true human nature. They are literally and unintentionally destroying our authentic selves, our souls. They are forcing us to create an ego in order to survive. They are forcing us into fight or flight. If we are then being forced into these false creations of the ego, how can anyone say once they reach adulthood that they are living morally or intentionally or authentic? If all we have ever known is survival and slavery programming, then how the hell is anyone going to say they are doing this or that to help someone else? It is all virtue signaling. Until the root systems of our daily operations and thought processes is addressed, We are merely looking for any reason to justify our positions and defend our fragile egos. So why won't most people face the fact that their whole life philosophy is based on lies, illusions, and manipulations? Because it shakes their very core of existence. Because in order to properly address these things, we must go all the way back to birth. No, all the way back to when these illusions were first cast. We must address the fact that history is written by the winners and that humanity as a species was lost a long time ago. The winners have been twisting and manipulating us for generations. This goes back to just how resilient and strong the human spirit is. For us to be hoodwinked, abused, controlled, manipulated, and forced into toxic ways of thinking and operating for so many generations, and still have a grasp on our natural empathy is amazing. This is why they fear us so much. This is why all the effort is spent trying to convince us we came from monkeys and that our ancestors were cavemen. They have to convince you that you are just a tiny speck of insignificant sand in the ocean of time, and that everything outside of us is more important. They are scared to death of us confronting these lies and recognizing and accepting the fact of our absolute divine sovereignty. Why do you think since birth, everything and everyone has beat you down and told you that you needed something outside yourself, be it food, authority, experts, school, a savior, community, acceptance, etc., in order to survive and thrive? Guys, this is the grandest illusion of all. We need nothing outside ourselves. The only thing we needed was a safe space provided by those who brought us into this world in order for our physical avatars to mature and develop. That is it. Instead, we got placed with abusive authority figures who were programmed to believe they needed to have dominion over us. These agents of the state believe we were born retarded and can't survive without them. This is a complete twisted 180 from the truth. Yes, we needed them to provide a safe space. That's it. We did not need them to name, number, and catalog us into slavery systems. We did not need them to allow the state to inject us with poisons. We did not need them to scare us to death, causing us to separate from our soul and make our brains create an ego to survive their torturous, abusive methods of teaching, instructing us how to eat poisons, how to separate from human contact, and how to learn all this superfluous bullshit knowledge that is paradoxical and never ending. This is all slavery. This is all purposeful. This is all a deliberate, abusive means of control. Humanity has been hijacked. We have been taken over and used. We are being farmed. We are being programmed with invisible chains since birth. Our controllers are extremely diabolical and know exactly the means by which we are to be kept blindly following orders. It seems to me that at a certain point in time, humanity lived in perfect peace and harmony. Some other form of being happened upon us. And we, being the extremely empathic, loving, peaceful beings that we are, probably accepted them in with open arms. This other race immediately figured out that we could be easily manipulated. It probably did not take long for them to overcome us, not by force, but by playing on our empathy by means of their naturally diabolical traits. And within a short amount of time, we became an enslaved species. That is the way I'm seeing it so far. How else can such amazingly strong, knowledgeable, empathic beings stray so far from what the meaning of their very existence is? Only through mass manipulation and programming. Only by means of deception. We are not a species consciously steering ourselves on this reckless course. That's what they want you to believe. They push the idea that man, through his inherent desire for wealth, fame, and fortune, is causing all this confusion and mayhem. If only we were that abhorrently selfish. It's a joke. It's a farce. They constantly program us to believe that it is a select few humans that are taking advantage of the rest. Absolutely false. It is the unseen hand that guides and controls the events that have led us to where we are at today. It is these puppets acting as world leaders that we are to blame, yet we keep voting in their rigged systems. Guys, wake up. This is a completely controlled narrative that is being forcibly pushed on us to keep us from thinking critically. These patsies that we blame are nothing more than scapegoats, a cover story for what is really going on. If you really want to start pointing fingers, why don't we call out all the useful idiots we are surrounded with that oil the gears of this machine that unemotionally destroys everything in its path? How about those who work for the electric companies that will shut off your electric in the middle of summer? I mean, if you can't afford to pay your electric bill, what sense does it make to turn off the things that keep your food cold? Now you just lost all your food. Or how about all the cops, lawyers, and judges who have been complicit in kidnapping and locking millions up for decades for smoking weed? Then all of a sudden one day weed is legalized. And now what? Justice served. Millions of lives effectively ruined and labeled as felons and unhireable for something that was once considered bad yesterday, but today it's okay. Wake up, people. They have us judging and persecuting each other mindlessly. We join in with the throngs of the mob saying, well, they should have known better. Or, well, that's why you have to obey the law. Mindless zombies consenting to the massive abuse and enslavement of millions. Thousands of laws on the books. So many that constitutional lawyers freely admit that you can't step outside your house without breaking half a dozen. So why do we continue to perpetuate this enslavement? The most horrible things become acceptable when they become normal. Let me say that again, guys, because that's really crushing some slave programming you guys have. The most horrible things become acceptable when they become normal. This is exactly what the controllers have done. They twisted our whole purpose for existence on its head. They laid a veil of illusion over truth, fact, and reality. They took something innocent and pure and imbued it with confusion, fear, lack, desire, and doubt. They are so diabolical, they figured out how to get us to police ourselves and keep each other in check. They hide in the shadows and pull the strings of the authority puppets that we so eagerly worship and obey. They know the human condition and exploited every flaw it had. Our biggest flaw being that we probably were immensely trustful of others and always leaning towards the good in things and not acknowledging the inherent evil in some. It is so extremely apparent that we have been forced from our natural state of being. We have been stripped of our humanity. Again, why do we feel empathic and naturally don't want to cause harm? Is it because that is a weakness that needs to be continually bred out of us? A flaw in our apex predator that needs to be continually beaten out of us? Or are we like this because that is our natural state, and no matter how much they program and manipulate us, there is always that deep knowing and connection that is clinging on, waiting for us to come out of the fog and recognize and accept this innate capacity for truth, kindness, and empathy for others. It can't be both. Either we are apex predators who are survival creatures living in a dog-eat-dog world and need to continue to suppress and crush any sense of compassion and empathy for others because it is a weakness, or we are naturally empathic and moral and need to quit perpetrating and propagating these abusive slavery systems and come to terms with the fact that we have been hijacked. Either we were meant to be sovereign, or we were meant to be ruled and controlled. Either we are divine high vibrational beings, or we are products of an accidental biological evolutionary process that had us come from apes to cavemen to lazy materialist consumers. Either we are all-knowing, or we will never have enough time in our lives to learn all that is necessary. Either we were born whole, or as retarded minions. It can't be both ways. Either humanity was hijacked, or humanity somehow evolved from a tadpole, but once we got so far, we devolved to where we are now. These things are so extraordinarily simple, most will refuse to even contemplate them. We were taught that we are stupid, so why would we accept facts that are simple? If there isn't endless books and experts instructing us in a particular way of thinking or living, then we don't want to believe it. We are literally holding ourselves back. We are literally policing ourselves and keeping ourselves enslaved. All it takes is facing these things and accepting the apparent truth of the matter. But that takes courage. Courage seems to be the thing we lack the most, which makes sense when we have been taught that groupthink is safe, that going along to get along is the answer, that questioning things is something only the experts can do, that critical thinking can only be done with a textbook provided by rigorous authoritarian systems, that common sense is found in the middle of the crowd where it is held up by mindless minions. We prefer the safety of our toxic rhetoric and groupthink over any small bite-sized portion of the unsafe ability to think critically. After all, if we do our own thinking, where is the safety in that? Who is going to verify the veracity of what we say? What expert resources are there to back up and prove the thoughts and conclusions that come from our own common sense and experiences? If we go through life treating other beings as being others or its, we are missing out on what it means to be human. We have disassociated. We have been taught that we must do what is needed for survival with no regard to how this affects things outside of our small world of fulfilling our selfish, egotistical wants and desires. Who cares if slaves make your phone? Jesus wants you to have it. Who cares that third world country citizens are being starved and barely hanging on to survival, while large multinational corporations strip them of their resources? You are a compassionate, intelligent person for wanting to eat the healthy avocados and fruits that are harvested there. Who cares that literally tens of billions of animals are farmed and slaughtered at the earliest age possible? Protein is needed for a healthy body, and it tastes good. Who cares that there are different religions all over the world? Yours is right, and everyone who doesn't believe it is going to hell. Who cares that your consumption is at the cost of others having to live in abject poverty and slavery? You deserve it for working so hard. Who cares that your child screams and cries for hours on end while you teach it how to separate from human contact and it learns how to sleep on its own? This is how you learn to be the wonderful adult you are. Who cares if your neighbors or friends lose their jobs due to cutbacks or economic hardship? They should have chosen a smarter career. It is, after all, such a fair capitalistic system. Survival of the fittest, bitches. Who cares if the government policies exploit the poor and working class? It hasn't affected you yet. Who cares if we dump billions of tons of trash into the ocean and landfills every year? The consumption is absolutely necessary and must go on. Who cares if every world government locked down their citizens for 2 years, put muzzles on them, and used false data and experts to try and force experimental poisons into everyone's veins? They had to protect us, and we have to obey and listen to the experts. Otherwise, there would be lawlessness. Who cares that the American education system was based on 1700s Prussia military readiness centers that were designed to produce obedient, compliant soldiers by the age of 14? How else are our children supposed to learn? Who cares that the psychiatric field is based on a diagnostic book that literally everyone at some point in time falls into the category of mental illness? We must have compliance. Who cares that government and big business work hand in hand to ensure mass compliance and consumption? These are necessary for order and economic progress. Who cares that the word government comes from the Latin words guber and mente and literally mean to control the mind? How would we function without mind control? Who cares that our monetary system is literally based on a fiat, which literally means fake currency? How else are we to have all these things? Who cares that electric vehicles have a carbon footprint 10 times that of our combustion engines? Virtue signaling is so much fun. Who cares Hollywood and Disney were founded and always have been operated by a bunch of satanic pedophiles? At least our kids shut up and leave us alone. Guys, the only way we are going to break free from this enslavement is through critical thinking and common sense. We first must quit giving up our authenticity and common sense. We must stop ignoring our own intuition and experience and empathy. Let me say that again. We must stop ignoring our own intuition, experience, and empathy, and listening to experts who try and convince us the opposite is true. Excuse me. We must face these things head on with courage. We must trust ourselves and not these self-appointed authority figures who care about nothing but our compliance and consumption. We must have the courage to recognize and accept these things that are so apparently true and quit gaslighting ourselves into oblivion. We must be the change by aligning our thoughts, words, and actions and quit causing our own confusion and cognitive dissonance. We must ask ourselves what really matters. Is it my constant gratification and fulfillment of my desires and wants? Or should I be thinking critically and consuming responsibly? We have to quit being caught up in the bread and circuses that distract us from our miserable existence and start addressing our miserable existence. What are we going to do? Parlay this misery onto the next generation? These younger generations are pissed off at the baby boomers, and rightfully so. The baby boomers are a perfect example of what happens when you blindly consume and go along with the crowd by obeying government and worshiping celebrity and vices. Think about this. Most of them fooled themselves into thinking they were rebels and not complying. The controllers know all about controlled opposition and purposefully set up the narrative in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s by introducing the counterculture. That whole counterculture was a CIA program of problem, reaction, solution. This is the danger of mindless consumption, doing what feels good, and worshiping things outside ourselves. Will we commit the same mistake and allow ourselves to be led by our own Pied Piper to ultimate betrayal and destruction? Or will we do the hardest thing, the only thing that affects true change, by trusting in ourselves, reclaiming our authority, addressing these issues head on with empathy and courage? Healed people heal people, but it starts with us. No more excuses. No more shifting blame. No more pointing fingers. No more hiding behind our egos and self-righteousness. We have to face our demons and remember how to love ourselves, because only then will we be able to show love to others. Until we do this, we are simply virtue signaling egotistical, self-righteous assholes that will justify anything we do. I'll say it again. Until we do this, until we heal, until we face our demons and remember how to love ourselves so we can show love to others, until we do this, we are simply virtue signaling egotistical, self-righteous assholes that will justify anything we do. That makes us purveyors of the abuse, as well as consenting adults to these toxic systems of enslavement. I hope you choose to be courageous.